Hey, my name is Beau. I'm a musician and music teacher, and in this video, we're going to talk about modes and tonalities. What the heck are they? What's the best way to go about learning them so you can play them on your instrument or compose with them? How do you learn to audiate them effectively and learn to understand what they are theoretically? Those are two very different things. So basically, to get started, what a tonality actually is, it's a tonal context that has a very specific musical characteristic to it. So that sounds super abstract. So let's use a very concrete musical example just so we're all on the same page. If I take a familiar song, a very familiar song for most of you, and I can tell you that's major. Now if I say, listen to this one, most people, even if they are not musicians, they can tell that that is not the regular Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Something has changed about it. And what has changed is we've changed certain pitches in it so that the musical context sounds different. And even really young kids, if you play them both examples and you ask them, is this the regular one? Is this the regular one? Even if people don't know the words minor or they don't know anything about music theory, almost everyone will tell you that the second one, something is different about it. And people have different ways of talking about it. Some people think it sounds evil, or it sounds sad, or it sounds longing. There's no real right or wrong answer, but that's an actual example of something that you have probably grown up hearing in the tonality of major or the mode of major, and we just played it in the tonality of minor or the mode of minor. And so what a tonality or mode really is, it's a harmonic and tonal context that the music that we listen to gets placed in. And what ends up happening is that you can become very familiar with these contexts and they're recognizable. So most well-trained musicians can instantly identify if something is major or minor. Those are the most common tonalities that people learn. But there are also many other tonalities. There's things like Dorian and Phrygian and Lydian and Mixolydian. There's non-traditional tonalities, things like Lydian sharp 2 or Lydian augmented. There's all kinds of cool things. There's like melodic minor tonality, and the melodic minor scale itself has different modes, and so does the harmonic minor scale. And what this does for us as musicians, if we learn about these different scales and tonalities, it opens up a completely different set of harmonic options while we are composing. And also, if we are aware of these things, we tend to enjoy listening to other people's music more because we understand what they're kind of playing with and what they're kind of meddling with. And so that's just a very basic kind of overview of what a tonality even is. Now the question is, how should we go about actually learning tonalities? Because I find out there in the wild, there's a lot of confusion about tonalities. There's a lot of confusion about modes. Some people think that what a tonality is a scale itself, and that's not entirely incorrect, but it's missing the boat in terms of what's going on psychologically and cognitively when we're actually audiating those sounds. And so the thing you need to understand about a mode or a tonality, why it's giving you these characteristic feelings, like minor makes you feel sad and major makes you feel happy, and Lydian, for example, makes a lot of people feel like there's something dreamlike going on. Or if we do Lydian sharp 2, it has an even more interesting flavor to it. So the question is, how does this even happen musically and cognitively? How are we able to even audiate these different characteristics just naturally? Like, you could tell something I was doing there gave you this kind of dreamlike or mysterious quality to it, but you may have not known theoretically what I was doing. You may have not known what notes I was playing, but you kind of intuitively recognized that something, it didn't sound like a regular major scale. Something was different about it. And so the way that tonalities work is we always hear a certain pitch as being a tonal center or a resting tone. So have a listen to this for a sec. Listen to this C note. This C note right now, it sounds like it could be the end of a song. everything is orbiting it right now. Now listen if I play this F minor chord. Now, depending on how you're hearing the tonal center, an F minor chord will sound different. An F minor chord in the key of C major has a very particular quality to it, but an F minor chord in the tonality of C minor has a completely different sound to it. An F minor chord in the tonality of E flat major has a different characteristic to it. And so really what the brain is actually doing, when the brain listens to chords and melodies, what's going on tonally and harmonically, we hear one pitch as being central. So basically, I like to think about this as like a solar system analogy. So you have a pitch that's kind of the central gravity of the solar system, C in this case. And what's happening is all the other pitches are orbiting it. And so what our brain is really doing while we're listening to music is it's taking the frequency of the C note and it's comparing it to the frequencies of the other pitches. But that C note is the central pitch that all frequencies are being compared to. So if we play a C and a G, that G note has a very specific flavor because it's being compared to the C. But if I play an F and an A at the same time, our brain's still comparing the F and the A to the C note. Still comparing to the C. Still comparing to the C. Now there's obviously other little comparisons going on between the other notes, and this is kind of the miraculous thing about what our brain is even up to as we're listening to music. It's kind of mind-boggling, but the central point that I'm trying to get across is that everything is funneling down to this C note. Everything is funneling down to this gravity center, and that's what gives things the flavor that they have. And so if we take a C major scale, for example, just all the white notes on the piano are just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Our brain just compared all those little pitches to a C note, and that's what gave it that kind of positive or uplifting quality. But if I played C minor, what started to happen is that all those other pitches were being compared to C, but they're different distances from the tonal center. And that's what starts to give our brain this sense of like, well, that sounds different than this thing. And it's kind of amazing how our emotions get involved in this, and we start knowing what things are at a very intuitive or almost emotional level. And so that's an important thing to understand just about how we're actually audiating these things. And this has big implications for how we learn what a mode or tonality is theoretically, but the point is everything is being based off of this tonal center. Now, the question is, what's the most effective way to go about actually learning these things, to learn to audiate them? And so in the beginning here, I showed you an example of me playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in C major and then in C minor. And that's actually the process that you want to go through to learn this. So you can learn how to build modes and tonalities theoretically. You can learn that a Dorian scale is like a major scale, but it's got a flat third and a flat seven. And that's fantastic. You should learn that. But that's not primarily what's going to give you the musical chops to improvise with it and compose with it and jam with your friends and all that kind of stuff. What you really need to do is you need to spend time saturating your ears in these tonalities. A tonality is basically like, it's like a musical realm, and you need to spend time in it and getting used to it so that you can actually recognize it. And the most basic way you can do this is play a familiar song in the new tonality. This is super effective if you are a music teacher and you're trying to teach young kids to hear the difference between major and minor. Just keep playing songs in major and then do what you need to do to contort the song to play it in minor. And that's how I start this with every music student that I have, even if they're adults or teenagers. You know, if you can't tell me that Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is in minor just by listening to it, something is not right with your audiation skills yet. And so that's one way that you can teach a student or yourself to learn to audiate things is, try to play something from C major and turn it into C minor, and you can learn how to do that. The other way is you can make a playlist of different songs in certain tonalities. So if you're trying to learn how to hear what Dorian sounds like, make a playlist, find a list of songs online that you know are in Dorian, and make a playlist of Dorian songs and listen to those. You need to spend time kind of getting seeped in those sounds, and preferably listen to those songs repetitively, not just once and done, but many times a day for a couple weeks, and sing along with them. If you have the ability to actually listen to something and imitate it and sing it back, it's going to start seeping into your musical subconscious a little better. You're going to start audiating it better. And so that's another suggestion that I have, is if you want to learn how to hear Dorian or Lydian or something like that, find a list of songs online, ask ChatGPT or Reddit or whatever musical community you can get your hands on, and find a list of songs that are in each tonality and start listening to them, a couple times a day. Go through this playlist. Doesn't have to be the whole song, but just for like a minute or two, get the gist of it. Learn how to sing it. Singing will really help you connect with the music in a non-theoretical way, in a non-conceptual way. And that's really what you want. You need to understand these sounds. I think I actually learned the tonalities when I was younger from listening to video game music and from listening to film music, which probably mostly like John Williams and crazy composers like that. So you need actual real examples of the tonalities. You can't just expect, okay, I'm going to make a list of how to build all these tonalities. C minor has these notes and C Dorian has these notes and E Phrygian has these notes. That's fine. The theoretical stuff will be useful at some point, but if you don't have the raw musical ability to just, if I play you a song, if I play this right now, you should instantly be able to tell me what tonality that was. If you had any question over that was major or minor or something, you really need to get on this stuff. But some people, when they listen to that, they'll be slightly confused. Is what I did minor, or was it Dorian, or was it something else? And those kinds of questions will not be a mystery to you once you know how to audiate this stuff. And so this is more than just ear training. This is actually a fundamental aspect of musicianship. If you can't recognize this stuff by ear, you're not truly participating with it at a musical level. Okay, so that's a bit of a basic thing for how to get started. Basically, just listen to things on repeat and sing them. Now, once you are ready to start learning about these things theoretically, what is the best way to go about this? Now, there's two ways we can learn about tonalities and modes, and they're both fantastic. You need to learn them both, but one is way more important than the other one for the long game. And I want to help you with this, because if I had a time machine, I would go back to my younger self and give little Beau this lesson I'm about to do now. But basically, we can learn modes and tonalities in a relative way or in a parallel way. So when we learn relative tonalities, what ends up happening is on the top, we have C major. These are the notes in C major starting from left to right. Now we could say this is D Dorian. These are the notes going from left to right. These are E Phrygian. These are the notes going left to right. And then we have F Lydian, and this continues. There's another one off G, there's another one off A. And that's called relative, you could call it relative tonality. I think that's the best way to describe it. But basically, this shows you if you just played the white notes on a piano or the notes that are just naturals, there's no sharps and flats, you can make one of each of the tonalities out of it. So we could make a major sounding tonality out of the notes with C as the center of gravity. But if we make D as the center of gravity, it's going to sound like a Dorian scale. If we play E as the center of gravity, it's going to sound like an E Phrygian scale. Now, there's a problem with the way this presentation works. And mainly the problem is when people assume that a scale is the same thing as a tonality. So for example, if I was in the key of C major, have a listen to this for a sec. I'm in the key of C major. Now, what you'll see online a lot of the time is if you play a scale that goes from E to E, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, then that's going to be E Phrygian. But listen to this. We're in the key of C major. That to me doesn't sound like Phrygian. That sounds like major still. And the reason it sounds like major and it doesn't sound like Phrygian is because you're hearing C as the resting tone, or the tonal center. Now if I make you hear E as the resting tone, I'll play those exact same notes and it's going to sound different. Now listen to the same notes. And so going back to what I was talking about before about audiation and the tonal center and all that kind of stuff, this is a big problem that people have. When people define a tonality or as a mode as just being playing, okay, you're just playing a C major scale, but you're starting from E to F, and that sounds like E Phrygian. That's not actually true. What gives it its musical meaning and its characteristic is what you're audiating as the resting tone, what you're audiating as the tonal center. And so this information on this chart is completely factually true, but it introduces a problem when people are learning modes. And I think a better way to do it, and I first learned this from Frank Gambale, the wonderful guitar player. He played with Chick Corea. He's an amazing guitarist. He's also an amazing piano player, apparently, too. But he has a nice video on modes called Modes, No More Mystery. But the way he recommends learning modes is a lot better, and I'm going to show you an example of this. So let's say we want to learn C major and C Dorian. So let's do a little chart here. C major's on top, C Dorian's on the bottom. What's the difference between the two? Immediately you can answer the question E flat and B flat. That's the difference. And so what we can actually learn to do is let's just take a C major scale and a C Dorian scale. So here's C major. Now if I do the same thing but I play in Dorian, we can not only intuitively hear that that was different, but we can figure out very specifically what exactly was different between the two. And it happens to be, if you use numbers, which is not very complicated and it ends up being super effective, if we compare these two using numbers, we can actually communicate with each other and talk about why they're different than each other. So what we can say is we have C major on the top, C Dorian on the bottom. It's the third and the sixth. Or sorry, the third and the seventh. I'm flipped backwards here. It's the third and the sixth, third and the seventh, and that's what's giving Dorian its characteristic quality when we compare it to major. And that's an important part about how we start talking about this theoretically. Everything is compared to major. So if I just focus on the C, D, and E note, and whether I'm playing the E note as an E flat or an E natural, we can spend some time playing with this. So have a listen. Here's C major. Just the first three notes of C major. Now if I do it with C Dorian, hopefully even just from me doing that, you can actually tell which one was which. And we can carry on the process with the rest of the tonalities, and that's a wonderful thing to do, even with non-traditional tonalities. Most people think there's only 7 modes or tonalities. That's not true. There's actually a ton of different ones. You can have tonalities made up of the notes that come from the melodic minor scale or the harmonic minor scale, and they're really beautiful sounds to play with. But this way of learning tonalities, it's called parallel. It's parallel because everything is being compared to the same tonal center. This is a much better way to understand what's going on, both theoretically, but also just on a way that's applicable to your instrument. Because again, if we go back to the other example that I gave, where we're saying C major is off these notes in C, but D Dorian starts off of this note, what ends up happening is it places a really heavy theoretical burden on us, because if we know that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we have no way of standardizing our comparison. We can't compare this D to C without having some extra theoretical knowledge. And there's no problem with that. A lot of musicians understand how to do that. But what ends up making this process much more easy for beginners is do everything in parallel. Now, there's actually other benefits to using parallel tonality. I'll use an example here. So if I'm playing a basic chord progression in the key of C, now the last chord that I did is a very popular thing. I was going C to F, C to G, and then C to F again. Now F minor. Now the question is, where does the F minor come from? Why am I playing F minor in the key of C? And what I'm actually doing is I'm borrowing a chord that normally is not in the key of C major, but I'm borrowing a chord that comes from C minor. So these are the notes in C minor on the bottom. And if you look right here, the notes that I've underlined, that's an F minor chord. And so what this is called modal interchange. It's a very fancy word for basically just borrowing chords from other tonalities. And it's a beautiful thing to do. And you tend to not learn how to do that very effectively unless you learn how to play in tonalities as a parallel thing. So here's another very beautiful thing you can do. If I'm in C major again, this little chord here, D flat major 7. The reason I started thinking of that, I was thinking about what if I was in E Phrygian, or what if I was in C Phrygian, what chords would be available to me? And so what's actually happening here is I'm thinking about everything being over a C, but I'm thinking about all the tonalities at once. And this kind of cracks you into this thing called, there's different words for it. A lot of jazz musicians just call it the magic mode. You stop even thinking about, okay, I'm in major, or I'm in minor, or I'm in Dorian. You just think about, I'm in C, and I could pull stuff from C major. I could pull stuff from C Dorian. I could pull stuff from C Phrygian, and all these chords become available to you. And this is kind of the last thing I want to talk about tonalities and modes for today. The one thing that's often missing from people's education, other than the fact that people aren't just listening to songs in the tonalities that they want to learn, the other thing that's missing is people miss out on how to make modal chord progressions. And so, for example, in the key of C Dorian, there's certain chord progressions there's certain chords and functions and progressions, however you want to say it, that end up sounding really good and that are really cool. Same in minor, same in Phrygian, same in Lydian. And a lot of the times when people learn modes and tonalities, again, they're just really thinking about it as a scale rather than it being like a whole musical realm or a whole musical context that you can actually sit in and improvise with. So again, this video is not designed to teach you how to audiate every tonality individually. This is meant to just tune your thinking about tonalities and modes and what they even are and some of the best practices. And again, just to recap, best practices: take a familiar song and change it from major to minor. Change it from major to Dorian. Change it from minor to Dorian. Minor to Dorian is a fantastic comparison to do. It really stands out very well. So that was the first recommendation. Second recommendation, make playlists with many songs from each tonality. So make a Dorian playlist and a Lydian playlist and a Phrygian playlist and listen to those on repeat and sing along with them. That'll do a lot to help your musical ear. Once you kind of have some playlists going and you're getting some awareness of like, okay, that doesn't sound like minor, that could be major, that doesn't sound like minor, but it's not major, maybe it's Dorian. You'll develop an ability to just recognize what it is. Once you have that skill starting to go, then you're ready to learn what these things are theoretically. And I actually don't recommend you learn really anything about these theoretically until you've done a lot of just basic listening of songs in those tonalities. So, that could be different for different people. You may have grown up playing tons of video games where there's actually like an absurd amount of Mixolydian and Lydian, and so you're actually ready to just jump in and learn this stuff theoretically. But when you are ready to learn it theoretically, learn parallel tonalities. So I would recommend learn all the tonalities off of C first. All the tonalities. Learn major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. Learn them all from C as a bass note, and then take them through the other keys. This other way of learning tonality is called like relative, where you would go like C major, A minor, C major, D Dorian. That is valuable, and you do want to learn that too, but it actually will hold you back quite a bit theoretically, and it will hold you back audiation-wise. And so hopefully that has been helpful. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you are interested in this stuff. This is a super fun topic to discuss. If you have any questions, you can also shoot me an email if you're interested. My name is Beau. I offer online guitar and piano lessons, and I really specialize in offering people coaching so that they can learn to audiate better. So if you're a music teacher and you want to teach your students to audiate better, I love doing that kind of coaching with people. Or if you're a musician that just wants to get their audiation game together, I'm your guy. So shoot me an email or leave a comment down below. Thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.